You are live.
So good evening, welcome. Welcome to IIIT Hyderabad Foundation Day Distinguished Lecture Series. We are celebrating 22 years of IIIT Hyderabad, which started on 2nd of September 1998. So the entire month of September, we'll be having a series of events. On 2nd September, we had the Foundation Day celebrations with the director's address and a roundtable with industry leaders, followed by alumni meet. Now, this is the first of the distinguished lecture series that we have planned for this month. And I'm going to introduce a person who literally needs no introduction. But I'm using this opportunity to recollect some of the milestones in his life, as well as IIIT Hyderabad association with him. Professor Raj Reddy's life is a dream journey. From Kattur, a small village in Chittoor district, to Gindi College in Madras, and then to New South Wales in Australia to Stanford. And when he joined in CMU, Carnegie Mellon University in 1969, I happened to be born in the same year. So he created history of all kinds. So he started this Robotics Institute and was the founding director of that institute. And later, when he became the Dean of Computer Science program at Carnegie Mellon, he created world-class institutions, including Language Technologies Institute, Human Computer Interface, HCI Institute, Software Research Institute, and also what is now a very well-known machine learning department of, at Carnegie Mellon. And he's a great influencer, as we know. He advised the President of the United States as co-chair of PTAC in Clinton's administration. He's a founding member of both IIIAI and IIITH, as well as he served the president of these two organizations. And all of us who are working in the area of artificial intelligence know how big and how great are these organizations. He advised several governments and also received several recognitions from many governments and many, many organizations. And I really cannot list all of them. Many governments besides the United States and India, like Israel, China, France, Japan, and several organizations have recognized him and then benefited from the advice that he gave to them. But then this information you can get by reading Wikipedia page on Professor Raj Reddy. But what I want to share today is where is his heart? His heart is in India. He's always thinking about India and her well-being. How do we solve India's largest problems? For example, lack of world-class education, healthcare, transportation. How do we bring people from the wrong side of the digital divide and line of poverty to the right side? He's a true visionary, be it related to future of learning or future of work or future of mobility. And many of his predictions have come true. Of course, they didn't come true accidentally. He and his people worked very hard to make many of those things a reality. And many people who are touched by his vision or influenced by his work have contributed quite a bit. I'm very proud, feel very blessed to be touched by two organizations he created. First one is AI Lab, the first AI Lab in India at University of Hyderabad, and then of course, IIIT Hyderabad. I cannot put in words all the contributions he made to IIIT Hyderabad. We are so proud that he is the head of this IIIT Hyderabad family as the chair of Governing Council. Many of us at IIIT Hyderabad have learned a great deal from him, a small part in an explicit manner, but a large part in an implicit manner. One of his dreams is to bring credible and deep knowledge to anyone, anywhere in the world, and in their mode of preference and in their own language. I'm so happy to be leading an effort at IIIT Hyderabad to realize a part of his dream to bring Wikipedia to Indian languages. So before handing over to Professor Raj Reddy, I would like to request all the audience to type in the question that you may have so that I can moderate and ask these questions at the end in the chat box. Okay? So, Professor Raj Reddy, we are looking forward to hear about all the reflection that you have in your long illustrious career in computer science or anything that is related to technology and innovation. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Professor.
Okay. I can't see the rest of the screen. All I'm seeing is the slide. Is that okay? You can see me physically, or am I missing on this? Anyway, let me see if I can minimize. Now we are in a different mode. That also is not what I want. So sorry to take more time here, but I just want to make sure. Here I can see in this screen view, but as soon as I go to, am I sharing the screen now or not?
Not yet.
Oh, I have to share the screen. Okay, share. So now, what I want to do is make sure that all of you are able to see what I'm seeing. Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Vasu. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm in Pittsburgh right now. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30. Good evening to all of you, and I look forward to the interaction after the talk. So many years ago, someone asked, how did someone who came from a little village in India end up being one of the leaders of AI community? And I said, I'm not that brilliant, or there's nothing magical about me. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time and chose the right path. And so I'd like to quickly take you through the first part of my life until the point where I was the first PhD in AI from Stanford. And then I became a faculty member there. And then in '69, I went to Carnegie Mellon. So I'll go up to that point and stop today. And if some future date, if you want to hear the rest of the story, I'll be happy to tell you that too. But this is probably the most interesting one for the audience in India. So question is, how does one get to become a leader of AI? You don't plan any of those things. Even if you happen to be, so for example, the reason people are curious at what happened or how it happened, here are some examples. In 1984, I got the Legion of Honor award. You can see the little medal hanging on my coat from President Mitterrand, who was the president of France at that time. And he came to CMU. And that's the story I'll tell another time. Here's another one where this is Turing Award. At the top, you can see at Feigenbaum and I getting Turing Award jointly in 1994, 95. And the one below is also of historical interest. This is more people. This was a Turing Award photograph from about 2007, I believe, where Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, in the middle, got the Turing Award for their design of the internet. But there were a lot of us to celebrate that. This is Butler Lamson, Alan Kay, Feigenbaum, Vint Cerf, and this is Doug Engelbart and Donald Knuth and me. Okay, so it's interesting. You kind of, if you're in the right place at the right time, you meet all these people.
Professor Reddy, can I request you to put it in the slideshow?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to do that. Okay. So if you want me to go back, this is the picture I was showing you. And here is Khan and Cerf. Vint Cerf is going to give a talk at the end of this month, I believe. And this is Donald Knuth and Doug Engelbart and other famous names like Feigenbaum and Alan Kay and Butler Lamson. So now this is 2001. I'm getting Padma Bhushan Award from the President Narayanan at that time. And this is the picture of all the people that got the Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan awards. And it so happens Amitabh Bachchan also got Padma Bhushan Award at that time. Since then, he also got Padma Vibhushan many years later. But here are all the people at that time, all of whom got Padma Bhushan in 2001. So anyway, so the question is, how did I get there? What is it? Here is one more. This is 2005 in Japan. I got the Honda Prize. The other Indian that got the Honda Prize was Dr. Swaminathan, who got it a few years earlier. So let me clean up this stuff. Okay, good. So the point I want to make is it turns out over a period of time. Now, how come I'm not able to advance to the... Okay. So, and as I was saying, I was not brilliant or not, superstar or anything. It just, I think in my case, at least, I happened to be at the right place at the right time. And it was just the beginning of the computer age in 1950s. So I'd like to kind of take you through that. So I come from a little village in Andhra Pradesh, very close to Chennai, about 50 miles, and called Kattur. And we were not poor, but there was a period when I was growing up when I was about 10 years old or something, where we had a 7-year drought. And there was no food to eat and nothing. We had, rice and food, but we probably never only had non-vegetarian once a week or something. And when I went to school, I don't know why. I think everyone was taught how to write letters, reading and writing on sand, on the ground, rather than having a slate or paper and pencil or something. It's not unique to me. Lots of people did the same thing in India, learning to write by writing in the sand. When I mentioned that to people in the United States, they're completely astonished. How can that be? What do you do? And so then when I went to college, Loyola College, I came from local language Telugu medium school in Jilla Parishad School in Kalahasti, and there everyone was speaking in English. It was English medium. I didn't understand it. To make matters worse, the Jesuit fathers, they spoke Irish and Scottish and Italian accents, and so it was all I could do was read the textbook and understand it and go and answer the questions. So I couldn't understand anything that was being said for 6 months. Suddenly, I could begin to understand the lectures. and hopefully things got better. But for first 6 months in the college, in an English medium college, did not understand a word they were saying. And then went to in the engineering college from Loyola College and graduated in 1958. But at that time, there were no IITs. Anyway, one of the interesting facts about Guindy College is it was actually started in 1794 as a surveying school, and it's the first engineering college in India, and first college also to begin granting degrees in 1800 somewhere. So it's an interesting history of its own. And here are some examples of my classmates who are all graduating. When people see these pictures, they're all surprised. They said, "My God, you're all looking like any other Western university, wearing ties and shirts and so on." I said, "Sure, we were not in the bushes, but it's different at once you're in a college, a school." So you slowly learn that, and by being in the right place. And then from Guindy, once I graduated, I went to Australia, where I started internship and then joined a master's program in civil engineering. And that's where I got introduced to computers. So it so happened um, uh, when I was there, the head of the department, my advisor, Stan Hall, was just returned from sabbatical, and he was using computers for structural analysis. So he said, he took me, he said, "I'm going to the computer center, why don't you come with me this evening?" So, and there he started writing programs and explaining to me how he was writing the program. And next day I became his programmer. He said, "Now you know how to do it. Why don't you go do it for me? I don't want to go in the evenings," because the computer was very busy. He was only so after I graduated from there, it so happened people were looking for people to hire who knew about computers, even though my degree was in civil engineering, structural engineering. And so IBM hired me as an applied science representative. And that's how I got into computers. The computers at that time, I never heard of the name computer until 1959. When I went to University of New South Wales, I came across this computer called English Electric Deuce Mark II, and you will find it in Wikipedia if you go look at it. It's a vacuum tube mercury delay line computer designed by Alan Turing. It's called Deuce because Alan Turing's design was ACE, a computing engine. And when the commercial version of it came out from English Electric, they added a few more features and called it Deuce. And that's the computer I ended up having. And interestingly, it already had a high-level language called JIP, General Interpretive Program. And what it had was it had one data structure, which is an array. Everything was an array. Even if I wanted to multiply two numbers, I have to define them as two arrays and multiply them. Yeah. So the other interesting aspect of the computers of that day is you could play music and do all kinds of other things because if you put a transducer next to the electromagnetic fields, the processing it was doing, could be converted to sounds, and that sounds like music. And so some people then figured out how to make music from these things. So it was clear even at that time, computers are not just for computing, you can do all kinds of things. This is one of the key visions. If you go back and look at Ada Lovelace's biography, Ada Lovelace was the first programmer who did programming in 1839 or something like that. But she was working with Babbage, and she was the programmer. And she said, you don't have to limit your computation to numbers. You can do images, and you can do music. You can do all kinds of other things. You can use it for artistic purposes. So the first part of my, life that was interesting is the discovering the idea of a digital computer. And so I worked at IBM, and then I was introduced to early programming languages like Alan Perlis and Van Zoren, and CMU already had designed a language called IT, then Fortran by John Backus, and IPL1 and so on from Noel Simon, and Lisp and Algol, which became more widely used afterwards. Lisp is still used in many places for symbolic programming. So I was kind of, after I finished my IBM career, I just came back to join Stanford as a PhD student. So here are a whole bunch of things I won't go through. So the next step was the question of how did we come to computer science? It turns out when I started working in 58, 59, there was no such thing as computer science. Almost everyone that was working in the field came from somewhere else. Some people came from electrical engineering, like all the people that designed ENIAC and so on. And some people came from programming. I guess you could call that computer science, like people from, who was the first programmer? There a whole bunch of women were used actually as programmers at the time, and which was very interesting. So computer science did not exist. And so when I went to Stanford in '63, it was just, I was in the mathematics department because George Forsythe, who was the head of the program, was a numerical analyst, and he and others. So I was a PhD student, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be a PhD in mathematics because I already had 3-4 years of experience in using computers at IBM. And so fortunately for me, I happened to be in the right time at the right place. In Stanford, computer science department was formed in '65. There were only 2 or 3 at that time, 2 I think. Carnegie Mellon and Stanford formed computer science departments. MIT and Berkeley chose not to do so and said, oh, computers, there's no such thing as computer science, it's part of electrical engineering. And then after 20 years, they have kind of become EECS, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And just last year or a year ago, MIT finally threw in the towel because they got $1 billion from Schwarzman to set up a school of computing, computer science. The reason being, computing is not just electrical engineering or even engineering, it's for everybody. No matter which discipline you're in, computer science will have an impact on your discipline. So the question was, in '65, what is computer science? So there was a paper that's widely published, and you can find it, by Noel Perlis and Simon in ACM, called Computer Science is the study of anything we do around computers. That's it. So that didn't help me because I was a student, graduate student at Stanford. So I decided I'm going to write my own paper. I said, computer science is like engineering. In engineering, we do things to enhance the physical capabilities of human beings. When you use a computer, we are enhancing mental capabilities of the human being. That's because anything we do with our mind, we can use a computer to do it faster and better and cheaper. Except, that I could say that because I was already hooked into AI, and I went to Stanford to do AI with John McCarthy research, PhD, but the rest of the world had not accepted that definition. So when I submitted my paper, they promptly rejected it. But I believe my definition is actually better suits today's computer science, namely anything we do, any mental activity that we're engaged in, we can and or may be able to use it, use a computer to do it faster or better or cheaper, whatever the possibilities are. And I gave a talk on this on early AI and computer science at Stanford, which has a lot more detail, saying all the things we were doing at that time, which is so inventing computer science. There golden age of Stanford, we had all these activities. We had robotics, we had computer vision, knowledge engineering, speech, language understanding, computer music, chess, symbolic mathematics, theorem proving, and common sense. And then also systems areas. It's not, we were an AI lab, but we were also working on time sharing, Lisp compilers, and hardware design, and graphics interfaces. The windows, we used to call them pieces of glass, and theory of computation, denotational semantics, and so on. So all of these ideas were there already in the 60s. And when we look back at what we were not doing, we were in the 60s, we did not think about personal computers. Alan Kay joined us toward the end of the decade in 1969. His thesis was on a Dynabook, which is like a laptop, and but most people didn't take him seriously at that time. And then the whole idea of internet and World Wide Web was not there. I was there at the beginning of internet, 1968. Stanford was connected as one of the ARPANET nodes. But I used to kind of joke with Khan and Cerf, saying, "You're nothing but plumbers. You're just connecting computers. What's so big deal about it?" And then they had the last laugh, because internet is probably the most important thing we have invented in the society today. And we didn't understand Moore's law or VLSI. We had an inkling of it. We certainly did not understand graphics and human-computer interaction. So we worked on various other things where we thought speech, vision, robotics, we can do it in a few years and we'll be done. Now it's 50, 60 years later, we have only scratched the surface. So here are some people that were there at that time. I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is George Forsyth, the head of the department and founder of the computer science department. This is John McCarthy. This is Ed Feigenbaum, who was already on the faculty at Stanford, and he was on my thesis advisory committee. Here is Gene Golub, who in numerical analysis. You might remember Klaus Wirth. He is the person that designed many languages, including Pascal. Then there were a bunch of young assistant professors. But when I finished my PhD, Stanford kindly agreed to hire me as an assistant professor. There are three other people who are all famous: Bill McKeeman, and this is Jerry Feldman, and David Grease. David Grease is still at Cornell today. And then we have some other people. This is Cleve Moeller, who was my roommate at Stanford, who has then founded the company called MathWorks, which is one of the largest mathematical software company and is still private. And they give away to the employees several $1 million a year in profit sharing. And this is Barbara Liskov. She's one of the first batch of PhD students from Stanford. She was, she's now a professor, or maybe at MIT. This is Susan Graham, a professor at Berkeley. These two were also PhDs in the first batch of PhDs. She was in the first batch, she was in the second or third batch. This is Marty Tannenbaum, who came a little later, who also had impact on computer vision and stuff at SRI. So the question is, I would now like to At Stanford, we have been interested in
the research is by no means complete, we would like to show you some results obtained as of autumn 1968. Our work is based on the analysis and classification of speech waves. Waves representing the changes in air pressure caused by our speech. This is a display of the waveform for the phrase, please. Analysis of such a wave poses many problems. Notice that it is impossible to say where one sound ends and another begins, or where one word ends and another begins. In normal speech, sounds and words flow into one another with no apparent boundaries. Thus, the phrase ice cream is ambiguous. So, for the time being, we restrict ourselves to the recognition of a limited set of isolated words or phrases, or a few simple constructs made out of these. For the purpose of analysis, we break down each utterance into quasi-linguistic units. This is an example of the analysis performed by the computer for the utterance 7, the real-time operation of the program by means of 2 examples. How are you? Pick up the big block at the right side. This illustrates the operation of the hand-eye-ear program. The whole program takes about 75,000 words of code. It takes about 15 to 30 seconds from the time the command is given to the time the operation is completed. Pick up every small block. Unlike the previous example, where the utterances were recognized as a single unit, here the commands are analyzed by recognizing individual words within the sentence. For this, we require that the sentence should be not only syntactically unambiguous, but that it should be possible to determine word boundaries unambiguously, and that the words themselves are phonemically unambiguous. Pick up every block. There are many problems that remain to be solved. Although individual hand-eye-ear programs work correctly over 90% of the time, the additive nature of the errors makes the combined program less reliable. If we wish to recognize several speakers reliably, at present we must train the system with all their voices. Language design for man-machine voice communication has proved to be tedious and should be automated. These and other problems will be solved within the next few years. And although we may not be able to speak with machines as incoherently as we can with people, a cooperative speaker will probably be able to speak to computers in simplified English.
So basically, that's the end of my talk. The purpose of this is to simply show you how I got to being one of the early people in AI and computer science. And in particular, the things that are not there in the presentation. When I got there in '64, that was the beginning of the funding for research in AI. Until that point, at that point on that year, Licklider funded MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and Stanford to do research in AI. And almost everything we did in the 60s came from that point of time. And it was a great time to be working at one of the leading centers of AI. And there were a lot of other people working on different things. So you absorbed all the things that they were doing also and internalized it. But when I look back and say, how did I become the first PhD in AI, or how did I become one of the, to come to find the Robotics Institute, or anything, any question? To me, it seems like I was, I could have done many number of other things. I seem to have chosen certain path at each time, which kind of led me to where I am in some sense. And so there are two quotations I'm very fond of. One is from Isaac Newton, which says, "If I have seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants." And there's another poem by Robert Frost saying, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." At various points in my career, whether I went to Loyola College or engineering college, or went abroad to Australia, or then did graduate work there, and was in the right place to go to the get introduced to the computers and programming, and then going to Stanford and being at the beginning of the computer science department and getting the first PhD. All of these things, I think it's purely a matter of luck in my case. I just was, nothing pre-planned, or, when you look at other people, there are many biographies you see where people knew, even when they were high school students, exactly what they were going to do after, in their career, and what they want to study and how they want to go. And I'm kind of amazed. In my case, coming from a village, I didn't get much guidance from anyone. And so I didn't have any way of knowing what I should do. And it just happened. I was very fortunate to be in the right place. And then at each point in time, I took the path I took because somehow my mind was prepared for that particular option. And that's what is interesting about it. Thank you. And Vasu, you can take over. Oh, one more thing, that I only showed part of the video. If you want to see the full video, which is like about 8, 9, 10 minutes, it's on the YouTube under Here, HEAR, here, Stanford. It was produced at Stanford in 1968. Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Professor Raj Reddy. These are very interesting reflections and some of the things we haven't heard before. But then one question that some of us have is, as a brown man at that time,
right,
what are the really, now we know that there are many people, Indians in these universities and places in the United States and Australia, but what are your non-academic challenges that you have faced when you visited in the early 60s and so on?
Surprisingly, I have never encountered, any racism of any kind, mainly because I'm probably highly focused. I'm only in my research lab or in the classroom, or, studying, and didn't go out into the real world. And so I came across these two people, who were having a drink in a pub in Kansas or somewhere, St. Louis, and somebody came and shot them. I said, why would they shoot them? Mainly because they were brown. And then I said, what were these guys doing in a bar having a drink? So in my case, I guess I'm not. Don't like to go explore things and do all kinds of things. As somebody was asking me the other day, what are your hobbies? My hobbies are my work. I don't play golf. I don't play anything. I don't have no games, nothing, right? maybe only other hobby is I read books, maybe. That's other than that. So, and maybe, walk for the thing, but I had never come across, because most of the people I would come across are all people who are highly educated. All these uh, biases and racial biases all come when you're in a completely different kind of people who uh, have never come across people like you, and then say, why are they here? Why is he here in my part of the world and taking up my job or making money, more money than I am? That may be there, but I never came across that.
Thank you. There is actually, besides spending so much time in making machines intelligent and so on, you have also spent most of your life in building institutions. So I'd like to hear from you, what are the major lessons that you would like to pass on to the current set of people in terms of the difficulties or other the important aspects of institution building?
User interface design. Is that what? So basically, one of the things we discover is if a system is designed well, you don't even need a manual. You can start using it and you'll be able to kind of figure out how to use it. So if you happen to have an iPhone, right, like this one, designed by Steve Jobs, it's a pleasure to use it because everything you think you ought to do it, you do it and it works. Whereas when I started using Android phone, it's not the case. It's pretty good, but there are still a number of places where I get stuck. I say, what do I do now? And it requires some, and the problem is Android is designed to run on many different phones and so on. But it goes on right from the beginning of the design of all the Microsoft software. Everything is like pulling teeth. And I was actually commenting to our computer people, group at IIIT. I said, we tried using Teams for almost half hour. Finally, I gave up. I said, if it takes this long to launch Teams so I can use it, I don't know how to use it. So I requested they switch to Zoom, and they said, no, Zoom is not secure, and the people can. I said, fine, let them hack in if they want to listen to my talk. What is the big deal? It's not. So it turns out people have various kinds of limitations. They forget. They make mistakes. I don't know about you. I have lost many files after working for whole many hours or even days. I would accidentally hit the one key and it'll delete. And then I can't recover it. So one of the early principles I suggested is what I call unlimited undo. No matter what I do with the computer, there should be an unlimited undo button I should press that should immediately undo what I did. And right now, I can do part of it with Control Z on the keyboard in Microsoft systems, where whatever, if you deleted or did something, that will get you back. Unlimited undo means you can keep going back further and further. And that's because people make mistakes, errors. We forget. And that means every time I come back, I shouldn't have to go pick up the manual and figure out how to do it. Everything should be kind of intuitive. And there should be hints in the design of the system where the system should see if I'm actually typing something or I'm just staring at the screen because I can't figure out what to do. And then after 10 or 20 seconds, you should pipe up and give me some hint saying, it looks like you're confused. Can I help you? What do you want to do? Kind of thing. All of those require a lot of additional thinking. This is all AI. An intelligent system would do that, but a badly designed system or system that didn't think about any of it. And then people also get confused. you don't want to confuse them with a lot of information. So every time I get an email where I have to read 3 pages, and then I get very annoyed saying, hey, why do I have to read all this? Tell me what you want me to do. That should be the headline. It's like newspapers. Give me the headline first in the subject, then I'll decide whether I want to read the rest of the message or not. And then as I'm reading the message, if I only want to choose to read 1 paragraph, that should be complete. If I need more detail, I can go further. So if I'm clicking, getting ready to give this talk, all I want is a link for the Zoom. And that should be in the, near the top of the message. And if you want all other explanation, I don't need it. But if the link is not there and I have to read everything before I get there, then I'm impatient. One of the aspects of human beings is we get impatient. There are a lot of human limitations. We make mistakes, we forget, we get confused, we get impatient, and on and on. If you're not sensitive to these human failings and foibles, then you will design systems that are not that good. For example, I never read a manual. So I kind of require, I say, if I can't figure it out without reading a manual, then I'm not going to use your system. I don't care. It's not worth it. So that I think it's important that we at IIIT should start teaching HCI as a class.
So my next question is about your reflections on the way that India adopted computer science, artificial intelligence, and so on. As you are spreading your wings in the United States and rest of the world, you must have also observed the way things are progressing in India. And then you have made several attempts trying to influence governments in India, start new programs, start new institutions. But then, some of them are very, very successful. Some of them perhaps didn't take the shape that you wanted them to take. But now in hindsight, what are your reflections on what India could have done in the last 30, 40 years, but which actually failed to do?
Yeah, that's a very interesting challenge. And people don't do things because it's not on high priority for them. So, for example, I had the opportunity to come back, not go to Stanford, instead go back to India and work for IBM with very big salary. And I chose not to do that. And I don't know why because that would have been an equally interesting career, but not this one. And so when I was visiting there in the mid-70s, in most other places, banks were already using computers. In India, they could not introduce computers into the banks because the unions didn't want computers. They said that will kind of reduce our employment. And as a result, because these days everything in banking is electronic, computer-based, and so we were kind of held back by that kind of view by many, 2-3 decades. Second one is I remember meeting the Minister of Electronics. I forget his name at this point in 1980. I said, look, the rest of the world is already using internet. You should begin, getting internet and email into. This was before email became popular elsewhere. And he was very positive. I said, yeah, well, let's do that. And then it never happened. Then over the period of time, I remember there was a group that was given a research contract by Department of IT to do OCR. And this was in 1990 or something. And I was with, I think the president at that time was Dr. Kalam. And the group came and said, here is a CD, DVD, which will do optical character recognition of all Indian languages. And they had actually implemented it. And they got 90% accuracy and said, this is good enough, 90%, so we should present it to it. And it turned out, the president tried to use it, it didn't work anyway, but even if it had worked, what they did not understand is in optical character recognition, if you're scanning a page and record it, if you make 1% error, or 90%, 10% error, that means every 10th character is wrong. Right? Yeah. And therefore, every other word is wrong. It's not completely not readable. Even if you make one error out of every 100, it's not readable. So the people in printing industry say no more than 2 errors for the whole book. And so it turns out there are some fundamental things you have to rediscover, people didn't discover. And these days, my main soapbox is about a third of the population of the world is either illiterate or semi-literate. By semi-literate, I mean, if you gave them a newspaper, they can actually read the words slowly, but they can't understand what the paragraph says. And I would say there are about 2.5 billion people that fall into these categories. They not only can't read English, they can't read even Telugu, and even Telugu that they read, they can't understand. And so the question is, and these people are completely held back. They may have a smartphone, but they can't truly use all the functionality in the smartphone. And I kind of say, look, everybody needs access to knowledge. And if you happen to be an English reading person in the United States or wherever, you have this encyclopedia called Wikipedia, which has almost 10 million articles, whereas and it's free. Anybody can access it. Whereas in India, most Indian language Wikipedias have 1% of that, like 100,000 articles or less. So that means we're depriving the population of India of access to knowledge. So when people say, don't make it English medium, it has to be Telugu medium, I say, look, I can repeat Telugu poems. Can you? I remember everything. But that doesn't require, I have to learn science and history and geography, whatever it is in Telugu. What I need is strong background in Telugu language and literature and poetry and all the other things, and not require all the rest of the access to the knowledge, information should be in English. You don't want to devalue your mother tongue, but at the same time, you don't want to kind of deprive the people, future generations, from access to the knowledge if they can't read English. And so I'll tell you one poem, right? At least I'll read you, I'll tell you one line of it. I can tell you the rest of it too. Wakaso nelanu pavalinchu, wakaso naparu pusajapai, and goes on. And it says, if you're someone who really are interested in getting things done, doesn't matter whether you have to sleep on the floor or whether you have a very comfortable bed. You don't care. You don't pay attention to that. And there's a beautiful poem, Bhartrihari Subhashtam. I know literally maybe 50 or 100 of them. I remember them from studying it in high school. And so in that sense, we need to make sure our kids know Telugu and understand our literature and culture. But that doesn't mean we should deprive them of all the rest of the things everybody else is getting. So it's something that's not fully understood. And so we need to make it clear.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. There is one question from a person called Shantanu Singh. He was asking that during your PhD, when you were doing your PhD, and then as assistant professor, did you have clarity regarding what you wanted to do? Were you into research for exploring possibilities or building solutions for a particular problem then? And also he asks, what do you suggest to someone who is trying to figure out purpose behind research?
Yeah. So I had clarity of what I was doing at every point in time. That does not mean I had some grand vision. The vision I have today of kind of providing access to smartphones for everyone in the world for free, I did not have 20 years ago. Since in the last 20 years, I've been one of the basic themes of my talks is information technology, and especially smartphones, are so important to everyone, every person. We should just give one to every person in the world. And I calculated the cost. If a phone is about $100, there are about 10 billion people, less than 10 billion. We only need $1 trillion to give everyone a phone. If you look at today, the COVID shutdown in India is expected to reduce the GDP of India by 10 to 20%. Some people are even saying 25%. Even if it is 10%, the GDP of India is $3 trillion. We are kind of, within one full swoop, we have kind of lost $300 billion because we could not control. If everyone had a smartphone and smartwatch, and the government gave it to them, that would not, it would only cost $140 billion. If you gave one to every person in India, 140, we have 1.4 billion people, multiply by 100, it's $140 billion. And so, you'll save. The question is, if I had the smartphone and the smartwatch, I can track all the parameters, medical health parameters like heart rate and breathing rate and all of those things, oxygen rate, and I can predict 2 days to 4 days before you will have COVID, ahead of time, in prediction, and therefore I can begin to quarantine people much earlier, and so I don't think we need any lockdowns at all. That whole thing can be gotten rid of, and it was obvious to me, not because of COVID, but for all health reasons. If I have any health problem, I can detect and take appropriate steps much earlier than now, and before I get seriously ill. And that's something I fully understand. Same, just like I fully understand we need to provide access to Wikipedia in all the Indian languages. Not everybody can read English. And at the same time, we can't teach them English. There's not enough time. So we have to get them, Telugu Wikipedia or Telugu entries. And there are not enough people to go and translate it because we may know English, but we don't know how to translate it well, right? And therefore, we need to give them some tool which will give them access to knowledge. So there are lots of things like that are obvious to me today. They were not obvious to me when I was doing my PhD. I was clear there are some things we know how to do as human beings, and in AI, we ought to be able to build a computer that can understand speech, that can see and understand vision, and understand language, and build a robot. Those kinds of things. Because I can walk, can I build a computer to walk? That was the limit of my vision at that time. All these other things didn't exist.
These are very important answers. Thank you so much for sharing your reflections, and then it's very, very valuable for all of us, to peek into what was going on in your mind at that time and all your thoughts about your reflections on computer science in general and your area more specifically. So I'd like to thank you so much for spending time with us. There are so many other questions, but going by the time limitation that we have to end this session here. And then I would like to remind all the audience that the next distinguished lecture is on 16th September with Manisha Sabu of Infosys. And then following that particular lecture, again, a week later, is from Nivriti from Intel. And then we are ending this lecture series with a talk from another Turing Award winner, Dr. Vince Sir, who is known as one of the fathers of Internet. Thank you for joining. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.